Good morning. President Tinubu has been declared Man of the Year. I recall that in an interview a few months ago, I think in October, you described him as a man of ideas, but that he is surrounded by very incompetent people, a team that you don't consider, good enough. Well, maybe you have changed your mind, because now this day newspaper says he is Man of the Year for everything: his courage, his determination, his reforms, and how he has intentionally pursued those reforms. He cannot do that alone without his team, by the way. And some of those reforms, he says, he will not turn back. He will not turn away from them, whether it's local government reform or even the reform of taxation in the country. Do you have a different opinion in terms of how he has been very deliberate and he has been consistent? And he himself says he has done excellently well by his own assessment.
Well, if this is a session to assess the presidency of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I think we would need more time to do that. But I mean, this day has every right to declare whoever it wants as Man of the Year. And I don't quite know what criteria and what methods they followed to arrive at that conclusion. But for all I know, and for all many Nigerians who remember President Tinubu, is the suffering that has been associated with his presidency since he arrived. Yes, I used to know him to be a man of ideas with books around, and we used to engage because, if you remember, I was the National Secretary of AC, which later became ACN, while I was still the National Secretary. So I had occasion to interact very closely and fairly consistently for a long period of time. But I find all that has evaporated. I don't see the ideas. I don't see the dynamism. I don't see that progressiveness. I see somebody who is almost turning into a monarch. In the last media chat, if I got it right, he did talk about the tax bill being sacrosanct. How can it be sacrosanct? This is a bill in front of the National Assembly. Even at that, not properly presented to the National Assembly, because when the Senate presented it, it was not on the order paper. And you can't discuss by parliamentary rules and procedures, any matter which is not already in the order paper. So this idea to smuggle things and this idea of coming through the back door creates a lot of suspicion. And you see, I can go on, but let me make, 3 points, if you please. Okay, the first point is the fact that government, and this is not just the APC administration, even the PDP and other political parties that have ruled in different, in states, they don't have an appreciation of the future. When they speak about the problems of this country and they want to fix it, I don't see a proper understanding of the problems. And that's a starting point. And like I use agriculture to demonstrate. I was about to use education to say that I made a statement. We did a rough survey, and we found that nearly 60%, at least in the north, of tertiary institutions, and this across universities, polytechnics, colleges of education, colleges of legal studies, 60% are not able to go back to school this year because it's either they cannot pay for the registration fees, or they have paid for the registration fees but they cannot pay for the transport, or they have paid for both registration and transport but they cannot find food to eat. They cannot find the money to eat food. Now, I drew attention, and I was quite happy that the Federal Minister for Education was there, and he picked interest in that, and we did. He invited me and we had a very good discussion. But the point here is the government does not seem to be aware of these facts. And even in the student loan scheme that they have now started, it's not really working. And there is no monitoring and evaluation. So all these are matters that will affect whatever policy, whatever program of government. And these are things that are not being addressed. This is one point. The second point is that, you know, governance in the 21st century is a corporate scientific business. You see, corporate governance is about, you know, the people, is about purpose, is about process, is about performance. These are the 4 P's of corporate governance. I don't see the governance in this country really taking that shape and process. So a lot of the policies, like the tax policy, there was no process. A team was set up. They may mean well, fair enough, but there were no sufficient consultation. For example, the National Economic Council apparently has not been consulted. They rejected it. The governors have not been consulted. They rejected it, and taxation is a concurrent is on the concurrent list, and so many other people. And here the president is saying this is sacrosanct. Sacrosanct how? I mean, this is a bill in front of the National Assembly. It has to go through the normal processes. And the president is beginning to behave like a monarch in a way, because if you go back to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you find that the Constitution, in arranging, in sequencing, you know, government, the National Assembly always comes first. The executive comes second. And if you look at the chapter 2, which is the fundamental objectives of directive state policy, you will see the focus on these things. And therefore, how can a president speak about a bill that he has presented to the National Assembly as sacrosanct? How? I mean, so this issue of governance has a huge, you know, problems that we need to address if we want anything to work. The third point is basically to say that the political culture that is reigning is in contradiction with the principles of good governance. Good governance, which delivers, is characterized by accountability, by transparency, by you know, rule of law, and which is following the processes as established by the Constitution or by the whatever regulatory authorities. But you find that in the political culture, you know, the demand on the politician or holders of political office does not even allow them to do their work. There is a huge demand out there for money, for and we have seen what has happened in this last festive season. You know, ministers were found in Abuja spending hundreds of millions, you know, on ceremonies, showering money, while the 90% or more of citizens cannot feed. The last statistic I read, 33 million are on the verge of starvation.
Professor Usman Bugaje critiques Nigerian leadership and governance. In a thought-provoking analysis, Professor Usman Bugaje has outlined critical issues plaguing Nigerian leadership, particularly under the current Tinubu administration and its predecessors. According to the professor, there are 3 major areas where Nigerian leaders have consistently fallen short, hindering the nation's progress. Firstly, Professor Bugaje highlighted the failure of leaders to utilize accurate information and ground realities to inform their policies. Instead of addressing issues with well-researched and practical solutions, they rely on assumptions, implementing poorly conceived strategy without proper monitoring or evaluation. Secondly, he criticized governance in Nigeria for being disconnected from the people. Specifically, he accused President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of adopting a monarchical approach, citing controversial tax reform bills and other unilateral policy imposed without adequate consultation or public support. Lastly, the professor emphasized the importance of good governance, which he defined as a system characterized by transparency, accountability, and adherence to the rule of law. He argued that these principles are glaring absent in the Tinubu's administration and among some state governors. Professor Bugaje's critique raises pressing questions about the state of leadership and governance in Nigeria. What are your thoughts on his assessment? Do you agree with his perspective on the challenges and solutions for Nigerians' development? Share your views in the comment section below. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more insightful analysis and updates.